All right, we were officially live, Luis. So nice to see you. How are you?
Fine, Laura. Thank you for inviting me.
We are excited to talk to you. So both you and Tyler had started this thing called Ketogains. So I don't want to like spoil the story. I want you to tell it. But we interviewed you guys on, I think it might have even been like our third ever podcast interview. And you attempted one of our master classes as well, but you graduated from our program. I think you had already taken some other courses as well. But there's a lot of synergy between Ketogains and what you guys do in Primal. And you do a lot of coaching. I kind of feel like you guys have really mastered this online coaching space. So I can't wait to hear all about it. Do you mind, please just introduce yourself, kind of who you are, what Ketogains is, but also you are doing a lot more than just Ketogains these days too. So I would love to kind of flush that out, what else is possible. So Luis Villaseñor, tell us about you.
Okay, just you want the long version or the short abridged
We got
version?
an hour. No, I mean, fill it in. I love the backstory about kind of how you and Tyler started this whole thing. So I would love for you to start there.
Okay, so I'm gonna go a little bit further back just to point out like sort of the beginning of all this.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like the classic fat guy in school. I used to be a little bit trolled and picked on, and I wasn't really good in sports. And in Mexico, I'm from Mexico. I live in Mexico. You really aren't very much like in the States that you have lots of sports or that you have the facilities to actually do different types of sports. Actually, we just mostly do soccer, right?
Yeah.
And I hate soccer. I'm like the worst Mexican ever, even though it's like national sport. And because I didn't do soccer, and more so, I was like, the classic kid that's always reading either comic books or even encyclopedias. I'm like someone very curious. I wasn't really the most popular person, but eventually, like in one of those drills that they have, I was the one that could do the more pull-ups. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'm good at actually something. And I recall that my father once bought a magazine, like a bodybuilding magazine. We're talking about the 90s, 80s, something. And I saw Arnold Schwarzenegger there. And for me, like, was one of my I don't know, idols at the time. It was like the Terminator time, Conan the Barbarian. I was a fan of He-Man, etc. So for me, it was like a role model to aspire to. And I said, I want to be like this guy. What do I actually have to do to become like him? And with finding that I was stronger than my peers was something that resonated with me. And so I always had this idea of how can I improve myself? How can I be a little bit better? But at the same time, I was or have always been a little bit distrustful about certain authorities in a way. I always want to understand why. And if you don't explain me why, I'm going to find my way. Because if it doesn't convince me or doesn't make sense, for me, it's not correct. So when I was a kid, again, I was a little bit or more so quite overweight, like not as overweight as some people, but in the sense that, let's say that there were 3 fat kids at school and I was one of them. And my mother took me to a dietitian, right? And so this lady was overweight. And I, in her face, I said, Mom, how can she's going to help me when she's so fat? Pretty much like a joke, right? And yeah, it didn't work for me. I just, she actually gave me, the classic white paper with breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, whatever. I just tried to make it my way. Didn't function. I actually came back heavier. And so like I started to make gradual changes that I, as a kid, could sort of understand. And from what I read, stopping drinking sodas, changing to water, stopped drinking or eating like candies whenever I could, because I still love certain things. I didn't have much information. And also understand we were in Mexico back then. Information wasn't as easy. We didn't have internet even at the moment, right?
Okay.
So just by doing certain little changes that I managed and that actually now I use for coaching strategies. Like, for example, I still recall that my first, let's say, probably 10 pounds that I lost were because I love to play video games. And so I thought, how can I trick myself into liking to do exercise? And I managed to get in a sale, one of those garage sales, used Nordic Track.
Oh yeah.
And I managed to, or I promised myself, okay, I'm only going to play video games while I'm on the Nordic Track device. And with that, without even noticing that much, I managed to lose probably my 10 first pounds. And so by the time that I actually ended college, I wasn't overweight. Like I became like, they used to call me like the fatty, let's say in translation.
Mhm.
And I ended up being called like Clark Kent because I wore glasses at the time.
That's a big
So
change.
I sort of did transform myself. And then what happened is when I got into college, I went through this like transition time where I wasn't really finding myself. And I was going to the gym at the time, not as seriously as I should. Like, I got into college, I don't even have that much time anymore. And, started dating and stuff like that. I remember that one girl, which I was very infatuated with, didn't respond back. And I went through a certain period of depression, along with I wasn't doing very well at college at the time. And I don't know how exactly, but I ended up fasting and not eating, and I ended up anorexic.
Oh, no.
I don't recall if I shared this story with you,
Mm-mm.
but I ended up weighing 48 kilos. I currently weigh 76, 78, depending on the time.
Wow.
And so I basically lost all the muscle that I had. I used to look like I can show you a picture later, but very much like the Mexican version of Michael Jackson because I had long hair and was pasty white because I was very malnourished. And I hit rock bottom when one day I tried a pair of jeans, and they fit, but they were very short. And it was like, what the hell happened with these jeans? And I saw they were my little brothers, which was 8 years at the time. So it's like, and I still felt myself overweight, body dysmorphia, etc. And for me, that was rock bottom. So I like said, what you're doing is wrong. You have to learn how to eat healthier. I didn't want to, look for help directly, but what I did, and at the time I also changed college, and things started to work a little bit better. But I started to study a little bit nutrition. At the time, I could go into other lectures from different classes. I studied first marketing and business administration. But in that particular college, you could go and enter any class you wanted. You wouldn't, of course, graduate from that, but they were like free classes in a way.
Yeah.
As long as you were, well, I think it's in the States, it's very similar, right? You can go and hear classes. You just need to take the test, and for that you have to pay, etc. Right?
Right.
So whenever I could, I had some friends that were studying nutrition, and it was a little bit interesting for me. So I used to go whenever I had the time to all of these classes and learn as much as I can. I went to the library as well and studied a lot. And just by that time, internet, that's what started to become a thing, right? So I used to go and try to use internet as much as I could. For whatever reason, coincidence, etc., I ended up going to some of the old school bodybuilder forums, where I actually learned that a lot of people don't know, but keto is a diet that a lot of bodybuilders use traditionally to try out and get stage ready.
Right.
And I wanted to understand how to maintain muscle and getting super lean without going the way that I had, because I ended up anorexic because I was afraid to eat because I didn't want to gain the weight that I had lost. I was also depressed, etc., etc. So one thing gravitated to the other, and before I knew it, it was just eating once a day, just a salad, right? And was tired, losing hair, etc. And when I found out and read a little bit about this, I ended up finding this diet for bodybuilders that I started to modify using my own. And eventually I ended up even talking with Lyle McDonald on certain bulletin forums.
Wow.
And he was just writing and about to be releasing the ketogenic diet book, which that book, along with several others, were like my Bible at the time. And I started to learn as much as I could along with the classes. And I would call, what I used to often joke, it was like a closet ketogenic dieter, because I didn't want to say to everyone what I was doing because it was too much of a hassle and explanation.
Mhm.
But long story short, in that case, that's when I started keto. We're talking about the 2000, and I haven't been on the diet ever since. Now, along with that, what happened is that I actually finished marketing and business administration. I work in several industries, restaurants, etc. But I've always been studying nutrition on the side, mostly as a hobby and a way to improve myself. Training became for me like a way to manage stress, if you will.
Sure.
And people started to notice and ask me a lot of questions on how could they improve themselves, or if I could coach them or teach them about training or the diet, etc. And at the same time, also because I started on these bodybuilding forums, I ended up for whatever reason in Reddit and started helping people both with training and nutrition, and more so also in low carb forums. For whatever reason, let's say that what I suggested to people sort of clicked and worked. And eventually I just decided, okay, how am I actually giving advice where I don't have an actual either certification or like more solid knowledge on certain topics. And I just decided to take one certification, one test. And so the story basically eventually, I had like over 10 certifications from different backgrounds, one of them the primal health coach. And in that time, in between, I met Tyler.
Mhm.
And
Did you meet him on
was,
Reddit? How did you meet
I
him?
actually met him on Reddit on these keto forums. And just at that time, I actually was at a, let's say, a crossroad in my career, because like, just for example, I worked in many industries from government to Coca-Cola directly, and to restaurants. I finally gravitated around restaurants, and I actually owned 2 bars and a restaurant myself. And I was really not liking what I was doing. It was like in that midlife crisis in a way where, okay, it was, okay, the business was working, but I was always sitting like in downtown, like in the that time where you're really, business is a little bit slow, and those well, how do you call them, downtown hours, whatever, like
Yeah.
when there's not many people, etc., or there's not much work. I always ended up like doing other stuff or learning or studying. And I recall that I started coaching some people. I didn't even know how much you should charge, or if people actually were going to pay for things like that. And coincidentally, that's when I also met Rob Wolf about that time. And he was, I remember one of his first questions when, for whatever reason, we were talking about business was, hey, Luis, how much do you charge for an hour? It's like $20. Like,
Yeah.
what? I thought you were charging 200 or something like that. And I was like, can you actually charge that much? And will people actually pay? And just like it, after talking to Rob, I decided to just increase my prices, and I actually got more clients than before. And it's, the idea that sometimes if you value yourself less, people perceive you as less, right? And on the other hand, you ask upfront for more money, people say, okay, he's expensive because he probably knows a lot of stuff, or etc. And of course,
Yeah.
eventually that's how you sell yourself. But for me, that was one of the most important aspects at the time. And then just to finish, I met Tyler around the time we sort of clicked. We had like some great ideas together. We saw a lot of things very similarly. And that at that time, that's when I went very much from coaching people on the side to, I started to get a lot of people that wanted to be coached. And I was, how do I actually go from one-on-one coaching to actually make this a business, in the sense that I can actually have or give service to more people, more clients, and it doesn't actually have to depend solely on me. Like making it just a one person, like a gig, to an actual company, and more so thinking about the ideas that I learned in college about entrepreneurship, et cetera, right? So I invited Tyler and said, let's have this thing going. Let's see if we can make it bigger, and let's see how far we can go. And we started just to create the actual or fine tune what we do and the coaching protocol, etc. And long story short, it sort of became what we are today, which is more so instead of just a one-on-one coaching gig, an actual company that employs coaches, and we do a lot of services on the side.
Oh my gosh. And so I remember when I first heard about you guys through people that were interested in my course that had been our course that had been following you guys. So that's when I'm like, what is this Ketogains thing? You know, and we got to chance to meet in person. I think you're right. It might have been Paleo FX. So can you give people a little bit of an evolution of how Ketogains started? So you started coaching people one-on-one as a lark on the side, charging not nearly enough, right? So did you start Ketogains and Tyler came on board, or did you guys decide to join forces based on what you were doing and he was doing, and then decided to start Ketogains? Do you mind telling us about how that came about?
Because of my mindset is more so of an entrepreneur, because of that's what I started first. I've always had that idea is if I'm going to make something, I'm just going to take precautions for everything.
Yeah.
When I actually started coaching, and because I loved keto and I was fairly knowledgeable at the time, I actually created the brand Ketogains.
Okay.
And the first thing that I did was register the brand, even create a logo, which we had like 2 iterations. And I just had a website, created a website, just like a placeholder. If it works, it works. If not, because I do believe a lot in the power of marketing and your presence. So I know that a lot of people just create start coaching and they don't have a logo, they don't have a brand name, etc. I started the other way around. I had the logo, I registered the trademark, I did everything that needs to be done. And then when I started to see that people were actually paying for this, and that this had the potential to actually grow bigger, and I had Tyler on the side very interested, it's like, help me grow this thing, because I'm not going to be able to do it by myself to the level that I want, because I'm more so like a team person. I understand that I have certain strengths and a lot of weaknesses, and I'd rather have people that are going to help me with my areas that need a little bit more polishing. And again, with Tyler, we sort of complemented each other very well.
Yeah. How did you come up with the name Keto? I mean, keto makes sense. And knowing you, I know why gains. Do you mind telling, like, how did you come up with that name? Because that happens a lot. Like, I'm trying to think of what to call myself, and we'll see people in the Facebook group. Hey, what do you think about this name or this logo? And in our course, in the business training, we do have people go through this thought experiment of like, okay, who am I, first of all? And at the end of the day, what problem do I think I can really solve, and for whom? And then once that comes about, then you can kind of think through like a business name, and all of this stuff unpacks for that. Everybody goes through their own journey. I've changed my business name like 4 times, but would you mind telling me a little bit about how you arrived at like the name and the brand? Because it sticks and it's stuck, and it's allowed you to actually to evolve, I think.
It has its benefits, and it has its negative sides, right? So basically, we had I'd say the luck of starting very much at the forefront when keto was fairly new, in the sense before actually exploding, because even though it's a diet that has been since ever in a lot of cases, it wasn't as popular, and it has been rebranded a couple of times. Like you had the Atkins version, you had whatever name that you want to call it, and then we had this resurgence in the 2016s, something like that, right? And probably was lucky enough to be, for example, when the Reddit group was relatively small. Just for reference, if I recall correctly, I've been on Reddit for about 12 years, right? Or a little bit more. And at the time where the keto group was starting, I think we were about 300,000. And now I think let me actually check it out, because I think it's over 1 million, if not more.
Wow.
People it's one of the biggest groups in Reddit, especially it's like one of the top 5 on nutrition or similar. Yeah, no, sorry. I exaggerated downward. It's 3,200,000.
3,200,000 people
It's the
on Reddit
biggest, it's the
in
biggest community there is
out of
uh,
town.
on a diet. Yeah, exactly. And
Wow.
Ketogains is over 160 or something, which
Yeah.
is not as big because it's a subset of the diet. And actually, Ketogains started from very much like, I'd say, a joke, because I was giving advice that at the time was a little bit contrarian to what a lot of people believed keto was. Like, if
Right.
you know, the classic definition of keto is it's like using percentages. For example, people call it a 70% fat diet, 20% protein, 5% carbohydrates, and with some degrees in between. And because I came from the bodybuilding background, I started basically with Lyle McDonald and other, and
Mhm.
actual Dr. Finney and Bolek directly with their studies. I can know when people have actually read the books or not, if they understand this facet, because even Dr. Finney and many other doctors now actually say, yeah, that 70 part of the energy comes from fat. But when your goal is to lose body fat, that 70% is probably compromised, 30%, 40%, depending on your own body fat. You don't actually have to eat all that fat. It's not a zero fat diet,
Right.
but the closer you are to your goal, the more fat you can probably eat. And again, I understand that different people may adjust depending on different contexts. And of course, fat along with protein helps with satiety. But in our coaching, for example, we explain this precisely to people, and we show them how dropping a little bit the fat that you eat and having a higher protein intake can also be beneficial for, of course, hunger and cravings, but also for what we want to do eventually, which is help them attain metabolic flexibility.
Mhm.
And going back to the name, it sort of became an in joke, because even though I became one of the people that contributed the most to this keto forum on Reddit, I was giving a little bit of conflicting advice regarding this 70% fat and how much you actually have to eat, etc. And at that time, people were more into that mindset. Right now, on the contrary, now you see people understanding this after 12 years of hammering the
Mhm.
explanation, right? And now it's even on the fact and the wiki, etc. But some people were so confused that they sort of banished me, and say, okay, Luis, you give great advice, but why don't you have your own subreddit where you explain the facets and the tidbits more related to strength training and body composition, blah, 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 because there's a lot of confusion for people. And I say, okay, yeah, that's perfect. I can understand context. And so I started to fine tune the protocol. And one thing that Reddit has is that you can create a Wikipedia or page related to a lot of what your website or your community is about. You
Yeah.
create rules, you create a lot of stuff. You have all that ability.
Oh.
And I dedicated a lot of time on, because you get always the same questions and over and over and over. I basically created a repository of the most common questions that people would make. And so it became from probably 10 questions to probably right now it's like a 300 pages worth of answers that
Yeah.
you can go and look, and you ask for something and you get that answer, right? Because if I show you right now, for example, my screen on my computer, one thing that I'm like, I was saying, very curious every time that I read a study or something that's in relation to something that I'm reviewing, I always keep a copy or a tab or etc. Right? So
Mhm.
people usually tell me that I have like photographic memory. No, what I do is I always take and save the links to all the different information that I gather, and I have it. I think I'm very good at is organizing stuff. So I have all the information cross-referenced so that
Right.
I can come up with a quick answer to any question.
So you've got this keto community on Reddit that's 3+ million people, and you've managed to kind of carve out this subsection for yourself, this sort of specialty for yourself. So guys, when you're thinking through this, when we talk about this in the course about having your own signature program, your own signature methodology, regardless of whether you fundamentally believe it's all that unique, I mean, look, Lyle McDonald, I mean, if you've read that guy, I mean, it's like encyclopedia reading. It's not an entertaining read. I have his women's book, and it's taken me forever to get through the thing. It's very small type. It's a big book. Like, it takes a long time to get through that. You have to really be interested in that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, it's
you know,
super boring as hell, and it's super dense. Like you start reading and then your brain hurts, right? But
right.
you have all the information there.
Right, but he's a super geeky, kind of researchy, sciencey kind of guy, and very big into body composition and stuff.
Yeah.
So you've created the subset of yourself. Now, why Reddit? Was that really kind of the precursor to all this other social media out there, or was that just the way it functioned suited you in terms of how you like to communicate?
So what happens is like Reddit is for very nerdy people to a point.
Okay.
Yeah, for real. And but it's also the way, like, if you want to know an answer from a practical standpoint,
Yeah.
usually that's where you get the best answers. And there, I don't know if you're familiar with the Reddit rule.
I'm with Reddit. What?
The Reddit rule.
No.
If you want to get the best answer to anything, post a question on Reddit, then answer it incorrectly. And you're gonna get like 100 different dissertations on why you're wrong and get the correct answer, but in a very detailed fashion, because usually you get a lot of the same questions, right?
Mhm.
And people are usually tired of answering the same questions over and over. But the moment you post a wrong answer, you get the actually boom, a wall of text with all the information that you were missing, very much like a good refined version of ChatGPT before it was actually.
Wow.
So,
I mean, it's super searchable. And I know even just through Google, if I Google a question, a lot of times I get these Reddit threads that pop up in terms of answers.
Something new. It wasn't something that you got before, but now actually when I want a very nuanced question, I write the question on Google /Reddit or at Reddit, like an apostrophe, and you'll get a very nuanced answer, or like probably it's a good way to go into the rabbit hole of certain studies or questions or topics that you may be interested of.
Yeah. So you formed this sort of following in this sort of your own sort of methodology and the way you think through things. And so now you and Tyler and Ketogains are known for doing this thing really, really well. But I think there's a lot about what the two of you do together and your team at Ketogains that you do really well. It's not just the methodology. You do a lot of things really well. You have a very thriving Facebook community. I know that. You have one that's open to everyone. Everyone's welcome to that. You and Tyler answer questions live in there, whether someone's a paying client or not. There's a tremendous amount of value in your free Facebook page. I know you've got your private stuff, you've got your boot camps. I know that you've brought in other coaches to help coach people through not only boot camps, but one-on-one too. So you've really developed this beautiful, thriving online coaching platform that works beautifully. So I would love a little more sort of detail there. So tell us a little bit about how you find clients at this point. What percentage of your kind of new clients are coming to you on social media? How many of them are people? Because I know this is true. I know people re-up and take more than one boot camp. You get a lot of recurring clients, which I know a lot of people are interested in learning more about how to do that, right? And you've got such a phenomenal entrepreneurial background. I think there's a lot that we can learn from you in terms of how to build a replicatable business that's capable of growth with both new clients and recurring clients, how to build this all online without going crazy. And you've got your hands in more than one pot now. You're doing more than Ketogains. So there was a lot in there. Tell us a little bit about how you sort of find clients, and is that different from when you started, when you guys first started, where most of your clients came from?
Yeah. So basically a lot of my clients come from like, again, Reddit is a very particular animal, and the clients that you get there are very particular as well. Like usually on Reddit, you will see mostly males, because that's like the typical person that are there, and different age groups, while on Facebook, you have mostly females of a different age group as well. So that's one of the reasons why we opened the Facebook group, because on Reddit, you have a lot of anonymity. On Facebook, you have your own profile. And usually male clients, they sort of know what they want to do, or they don't want that much guidance. They just want, give me a training program, give me a diet, and I'll see you in 15 weeks. And maybe we can tweak some other stuff. While females, they want to be coached, they want to have the support, they want to have a community, etc. Right? So basically, when I was thinking on how could I actually jump from one-on-one coaching to actually creating something more sustainable and durable, I thought, how can I coach 20 people at the same time? And I discovered the Facebook groups. And so on, what I started to do is I had very loyal people that followed me. And I was like, hey, you guys want to be coached in a group where you can have more of me directly versus the limited me that you get on the main group, because I cannot answer all the questions directly or give more nuance when I don't have all the information from certain people, etc. And so what I started to do is everybody did a same training program that could be adjustable depending on where you lived, what equipment you had, etc., but based around the same structure. And I was creating a program. We first started with 6 weeks. So every week, in a way, it's not just train and whatever, like a lot of people do. It's part learning. We teach them the basics of how to do the diet correctly. And it's not just the science, but it's the science and the challenges that you face on a daily basis, right? How do you explain the diet to doctors, what to say, what not to say, based on my experience and many of Antares' experience, and then eventually with a lot of experience from our clients, we do take a lot of recommendations and anecdotes and everything that our clients tell us, and we have incorporated our manual and booklet and let's say curricula based on a lot of that learning points, right? So basically, again, it's very much lifestyle, psychological coaching a lot. It's funny, but when you first study to be a nutritionist or a dietitian, you think it's all about macros and calories and better food choices. And if you're actually coaching someone, you sort of need more so a psychological background, because it's not about how many calories you should be eating. Everybody knows in a way what they should be eating and what they shouldn't be eating. The explanation is, why are we eating certain foods that are not good for us or that make us gain weight? And usually the answer is we're using food as a coping mechanism, right? So it's how to actually get people to understand this and help them create a plan that's going to work for them. So basically that's what we do in our group coaching, is finding our clients reasons for not being able to succeed in certain ways, and each story is different, along with some strength training, which helps them become more metabolically flexible, stronger, improve their aesthetics, and of course, the knowledge on how to set up a diet properly. And yeah, we do gravitate toward a low carb ketogenic diet, but there are certain circumstances that we actually take people out of keto, because some people work very well on these diets, some others generally don't. And we have hundreds of clients that when I explain to people outside of keto that we actually do this, they don't understand, right? For example, I have clients that started at 20 grams of carbs and now are at 200 and something, double their calories, especially about females. But it's something that we've built probably in the span of 2 years, because that's also like the average length of some of our clients, more than 2 years, which you were mentioning. And one of the reasons why I think that people stay with us so long is precisely because of all of that, this information that we give them. The training is not, we haven't repeated a single training program since we started. It's like every new camp or program, as we call them, is totally new. It's based, of course, on the same movements and ideas and patterns, but it has a topic and a theme, and so it sort of builds up on the last one. So even if you've been 5 years, you haven't done the same program exactly, right? And then also you're always learning something new, because even if we have a manual and a workbook, we usually incorporate new things because, for example, one of the things that I do is study as much as I can and take new certifications or debate on topics, etc. And I try to incorporate the newer nuances to the program. So people are always sort of learning a new theory or experimenting, or I try to include debating whenever possible, right? Or have people ask me uncomfortable questions, because that's also how I learn more, right? But yeah, I think that's mostly the reason why a lot of people stay with us for quite a while.
So you're able to do that and really get to know these people in that group format, in this boot camp format. How many people do you tend to bring into a boot camp at any one time? Do you have a limit?
It really depends, right? We usually have 3 levels.
Okay.
So one is for people that are completely new
Okay.
to diet, to training, to whatever, right? Then we also have like either an intermediate or advanced group, depending on if you've been a client for quite a while and you don't want to maybe start with the novice and go through the same questions, or if you are advanced also in the training. So like we have the 3 different versions of training and let's say different versions of knowledge. And usually even people that want to refresh, they jump back to like the starting or mid-level to get a refresher of certain things, because depending on which level you are, you either get more nuanced questions or like the abridged version of certain topics that you may be wanting to understand, and maybe we jump to more advanced stuff. But again, it's like it really, mostly we get people to a certain level depending on an initial questionnaire, and we ask them like, how comfortable are you with nutrition or training or etc. And depending on that, we funnel them to each level.
So is that like an online questionnaire that people fill and depending on how they fill out these answers, it kind of puts them on one track or another?
Yeah, on a way we do like an online questionnaire onboarding.
Yeah.
To get the initial data points from certain people, like their body weight, certain measurements, a little bit of a clinical profile, etc., to see if they may need certain information or certain care, because as you know, there is a certain degree of responsibility when you're coaching someone, and we want to do it with the best, well, within our scope of conduct and practice, right? We never, like I know that you are very vehement on this, but we don't give medical advice. We always try to work along with the client's physician and likely even have their signed permission in case that it's needed. But what we mostly give is suggestions to improve diet, to improve their physique, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we never encourage anyone to go against their doctor's medications or suggestions, or we may suggest a second opinion with maybe another doctor, because sadly, as you know, there are some doctors that are not very well informed on certain topics. Even though they are a doctor, doesn't mean that they know everything about nutrition, right? Which brings me to a point. Just because of this, and because a lot of people attacked me in my case that I wasn't a nutritionist, I actually also got a degree on nutrition during COVID. Because, especially here in Mexico, it was, oh, but you're not a registered dietitian, you cannot prescribe. Like, okay, now I am. So now what's the difference?
This leads me to a question actually that comes up. Charis Ray, is that how you pronounce your name? Or maybe, so anyway, they're asking, what reading do you recommend to learn more about keto? But also the second question here is, do you think it's okay to share info with clients without being a nutritionist?
You can share information, like it depends on what information we're talking about. The science of a certain diet, etc. is like you can get it from the internet. On what topics and what books, the thing is how deep you want to go and what level of knowledge you want to acquire. Because just like everything, I wouldn't recommend anyone to, for example, read a physiology book, because it can get over your head if you're not prepared to understand certain things. But for example, I would recommend precisely Lyle McDonald's book, The Ketogenic Diet, along with Mark's books, for example, because in one, you get like all the data with the studies. And if you also read Mark's book, for example, you're going to get like the more laid back version. And then you're going to get those aha moments.
Mhm.
because Mark's books are very nuanced, but they give you a lot like the basics.
Right. They're approachable is the way I explain
Exactly.
it. The way the content is written is very approachable to the average health consumer. But
Exactly.
what I love about how he writes too is he doesn't talk to you like you're an idiot. He doesn't exclude information because he doesn't think you're not going to understand it. He's just really good at explaining things and keeping the explanation simple and approachable.
Exactly.
And look, in terms of answering your question too about do you think it's okay? I think it's absolutely okay to talk about diet and nutrition with people, even though you're not a nutritionist. However, depending on where you live, there are laws on the books that have nothing to do with health coaching at all. There are no laws on the books anywhere in the world specific to health coaching that I'm aware of, but there are laws on the books throughout the world and certainly here in the United States, and it's different from state to state, that has licensure laws that are specific to a licensed profession like dietetics and medicine and things of that nature. And they have language written into them that might be exclusionary, that might indicate that someone who doesn't hold that license cannot perform certain duties. Right. So that you need to be aware of. But what you guys are doing with Ketogains, which is, I think, the brilliance of a group coaching program, is you're putting out a protocol, a general protocol that people are coming to you for. You're not necessarily sitting down and writing a prescriptive diet out to this person in general, right?
Exactly.
But even that, you can still dial things down individually by letting the client speak to you about their experience, sharing with them what you know about what those symptoms might mean within the context of what they're doing, and thus say, hey, you may want to try. I heard you use the term suggest. Right? So
Yep.
the beauty of a group program like what you're doing is it really does provide some cover there. But even with one-on-one clients, which I know you do too, the approach is different, right? You're not prescribing anything. You're starting with a traditional protocol that you're helping the client dial in based on their experience. You just said people will start with like 20 grams of carbs, and now you've got people that are up around 200 now. So this is all them sharing their experience, right? Getting that biofeedback saying, this sounds like this is, because you know enough about the mechanism of action, because you've done the research. Lyle McDonald's books are phenomenal about that kind of stuff. Michelle Hall. So the levels you do are novice, intermediate, and advanced ? And in each of those levels, you determine what you will share, basically what you think they will comprehend at their level.
Very much. Like, let me just put it, for example, we even have a level 0 that is called a fast track program, which is currently our program is 8 weeks long, basically 2 months. Why? Because we found out that less time doesn't really allow for habit and body changes as much as, like, people want fast results. And the first thing we tell them, this is not fast. This is, in a way, we're going to teach you to make it sustainable. And there's a period of adaptation, especially if you're new, where everything is going to either hurt in regards to strength training, or where you're going to feel very bad because, the changes from a high carb diet to keto, but we're going to help you through that. So it requires a certain time of adaptation. And of course, depending on the level of knowledge of the person on diet, nutrition, lifestyle habits, some people learn faster than others, and some people just, little bit of hand holding. So we are more cautious and patient with that kind of people, because they need a little bit more like time, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Usually the kind of people that usually gravitate to programs like this are already super stressed, super tired. Likely they've tried a lot of different diets. And the worst thing that you can do is bombard them with a lot of information. Otherwise, they're just going to quit. And when you have this client that stops showing up and that ghosts you, one of the worst things that we've seen is you cannot go and pursue that client. You have to very much let him or her be ready to come back whenever. But just, telling that person that you're still there, like, hey, we're still here. Whenever you feel ready, just come back. Because a lot of them, usually also feel ashamed that maybe they let you down or that they are lost their money because they are not getting results or not using the program. So again, it's better to use a more laid back approach and just explain people or like meet them where they are, I would say.
Mhm.
So I think that having levels depending on where your clients are could be a great starting points. And one of the great things that we did is basically we actually started with a lot of people that were novice, and right now they are experts.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do with basically our coaches were once our clients. So a lot of them were, I'd say, quite overweight. And now a lot of them have abs, right? Because they've been doing the program themselves for years and they understand a lot of the nuances themselves. And very much a lot of them have actually taught us more than we knew at the beginning, because now we have clients from, or well, experiences from different sides of the story. It's not just like at the beginning was maybe Tyler's and Louis' story and, transform into a series of steps or a protocol. Now we have a lot of feedback from, I'd say, Tyler has the actual numbers, but let me just say that before COVID and during COVID, we were coaching on average 600 people at the same time.
Wow.
And I think that we've coached, I'm just going to put a number out there, in between different people, more than 3,000 different clients. I myself have over 600 different clients that I personally coached over the span of all these years, unique clients, right? So yeah. And a lot of them, basically half of them are retaining clients that come and go or stay with us for a long time, but we grew along with them. That's like the beauty of it.
So, I mean, I think we could all probably identify a novice, as coaches, someone who clearly is just starting. What kind of things do you look for someone who might be more so in my mind, I've got, people that are brand new that have never really made this change, that have a lot of learning to do. And then a lot of my clients that I would kind of consider intermediate that tend to re-up again are folks that they're like, I know what to do, but it's not second nature still. I'm still really working hard at like these choices still feel intentional rather than real habits, and so those people, my program's 12 weeks, but I find around the 8-week mark they've kind of learned the basics, like they know what to do now. The advanced people are really, now stuff is a habit and they're really just trying to dial things in. They're going to kind of another level. So I would love to hear kind of what you're looking for in terms who you might encourage to be more of like how do you identify those people?
The ones that are in a different level. I actually usually play games with some of my clients in the sense, I don't know if you've heard, for example, about the 16 personality test.
The 16 personality test?
Mm-hmm. 16? So if you go down 16 personalities test, it's called a Myers-Briggs test.
Oh, Myers-Briggs I've taken. Yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. So you have 16 personalities. So depending on, I usually have like openly on the group says, hey, let's play this game, usually at the beginning of each program. And it sort of classifies each client, and they have, it helps us in a way determine what kind of message or they are going to accept more, or what kind of coaching. So for example, I usually take a subset of clients that are very type A, gung-ho, that they want challenges, etc. Tyler usually takes people that are more, that need more, a little bit more support, and we divide clients depending on the personality of the coaches, right? And for example, that's something that allows us to, okay, if I give you 20 push-ups, you're going to do 25. Perfect. Maybe you're kind of a Luis client. Okay, maybe you need a little bit more pat in the back and tell you, hey, you've got this. Don't worry about this or that. Maybe that's Tyler's client. Maybe you have someone that actually, again, depending on their personality, if they're more shy or etc., maybe we put them with Amy or with Melissa. Again, depending on the personality of the coach and the personality of the client. Now, this is a little bit more advanced, but like for someone that's starting, that also can give you a little bit more information about your clients and maybe you're doing some sort of group coaching and you find that most of your clients gravitate towards certain personality, you can probably adjust your coaching mannerism of speak to a certain level, or maybe add more challenges like, hey, for today, we're going to practice and do, I don't know, 100 kettlebell challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Or we're going to do a dietary challenge. So things that I usually do to spice things up, like let's avoid having diet drinks for 3 weeks, and everybody sort of self-report, and it keeps them sort of engaged, right? Or again, the kettlebell challenge. Like I'm not putting them to do super heavy kettlebells, but just let's see how many you can do in at the same time, well, one after another, and we have a scoreboard or a leaderboard, for example, things that create community rather than just competition for the sake of competition, right? And the great thing is that people start to get friends in the same community and they support each other. And so the moment that you have this problem about, I was saying before, like one client ghosts you, people ask for that person. Hey, where is Amy? We haven't seen her talk and she was so chatty. And then she's forced to appear eventually because everybody's looking for her and tagging her, right? For example. So one of the biggest things that we've seen is, for example, group coaching. It creates this certain sense of belonging and community, and everybody is looking for another.
Sorry, I muted myself because my children just walked in the front door and they're screaming. So I muted myself real quick. I 100% agree. Like when trying to weigh whether you want to do individual coaching or group coaching, they both have their benefits and their challenges. And when it comes to group coaching, the sense of community is bar none the biggest advantage. There's people share recipes, they share what's worked for them. They are just super supportive of each other when you're feeling down. And there's no way to replicate that in a one-on-one coaching relationship. There really isn't. But there are some clients that don't do well in a group format. They're shy, they hide, they don't come forward. They want that individual attention. So as a coach, just thinking through what you think your personality suits best. But in terms of really being able to scale things, I do believe that if you were finding yourself stuck and kind of hitting a plateau in a one-on-one coaching model, the next logical expansion is group, bar none. I personally think. So you got, how often do you run a new boot camp? Every 8 weeks? Is it every 2 months?
Weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, we already have basically the rest of the year planned out. So we are very much ahead of schedule. We always plan ahead and have everything done, because otherwise there's no way to actually do it properly.
Yeah.
So yeah, we run a new one every 8 weeks with a few vacation time. Maybe we rest for 2 weeks depending the season, right?
Yeah. So you've got Ketogains where you're running these boot camps every 2 weeks. You've hired a stable of coaches to help you with this. So it's not just you and Tyler, which by the way, Tyler has strep throat today, guys. That's why he couldn't be here. Poor guy. So you've got a community of coaches, which I just think I love it when I see other small businesses hiring coaches. The career path now outside of just an entrepreneurship is growing by leaps and bounds in health coaching, which I just love. But I also want to kind of pivot a little bit, and I want to talk about some of your other businesses. You and Tyler and Rob both launched Elementi, right? Element. Tell that backstory a little bit about how that came about, because I just think it's awesome.
Yeah, that's very much, that was born thanks to Ketogains. And what happened is, as you know, one of the main reasons that a lot of people leave keto is because they start to feel very tired, they drag down, headaches, etc. And those symptoms usually are the same symptoms as hypoglycemia, right? And a lot of people think, oh, it's because of the lack of carbs, blah, blah, blah. So this diet is not good for me. They eat a banana or a bread, whatever they feel better. And they say, keto is not something for me. When I was studying about the ketogenic diet, one of the first things I learned, precisely because of Lyle McDonald makes a very big point on that, is electrolytes or bust. Basically, if you are not salting your food, you're going to be feeling horrible and you're not going to last on this diet. So I had that thing hammered when I started doing the diet myself. And I remember when I was training, etc., I used to chew down on bouillon cubes, for example, when I was training, because there was nothing really similar at the time. So what happened with Element is that we used to give, and we still have it in our website, a recipe, which is basically like a cucumber mojito, which we call the Ketorade, which is very much sparkling water or plain water with lots of salt, a few cut cucumbers, sliced cucumber, mint, a little bit of low salt, some stevia, etc. And we used to suggest that to all of our clients. And the ones that followed that, very much it worked for them very well. And the ones who didn't, of course, they suffered the keto flu, right? And we tried to find a way to make it easy, because people are very bad at measuring, right? Like you tell them a spoon and they use a small spoon, some other use a very big spoon, whatever. So it's very difficult to actually get things right. And some people were actually trying to make their own salt pills, etc. And I found here in Mexico that there was like sort of something similar to Element that was being sold, and coincidentally was like one distant cousin of mine. And we started shipping that to the States, and people were like, they tried it and they were like, this is the difference between night and day, and was super easy for them because was it the perfect dosage. It didn't have to be mixing stuff. It actually, like, very much like Element, it elevated you at the moment. You actually felt it. And the reason was because it was a bunch of salt. Like, you weren't playing with just salting stuff. You actually had in between 0.5 gram to 1 gram of salt per dosage.
Yeah.
And people were really fighting for that. And it's like, if I find a way to actually make this in the States, instead of exporting this is going to be a game changer. And Rob was coincidentally here in Mexico for a vacation. And he was, hey, Luz, you want to come over? Like, I didn't have a plan to at the moment. And so I spent a week with him. And for me, it was like, I'm going to do the elevator pitch to Rob and see if he knows a guy or someone that can help us create this product in the States. And he loved the idea. He was, let me check with a few guys and see what we can come up with. And basically, we already had the proof of concept, because I showed them how many boxes we were selling at the time, how much people were actually willing to pay. I showed them very much like on Reddit, everybody was gobbling the product, etc. So again, I like to say that people think that it's something that was made outright, which if you look at the timeline, it took us about 6 months to create the product, but I actually say it's 8 years in the making. Why? Because ever since I was on Reddit, hey, my head hurts, it's electrolytes. Hey, I'm not losing weight, electrolytes. I'm tired, electrolytes. It's like 9 out of 10 issues with the diet are electrolyte related. And it looks like if you were making stuff up, but really it isn't. Then like really 9 out of 10 issues that people face with the diet are usually electrolyte related. I cannot sleep, or I have way too much energy. I have high adrenaline. I have high cortisol, blah, blah, blah. All of them usually are related, in some special cases, to electrolyte imbalances.
Yeah.
And I think that afterwards, and we found our correct business partners, when we released the product, and of course, along with Rob's expertise, the team that we built, and a little bit of, basically the whole community that accepted everything we've done so far, I think it was very much the recipe for a great product, which is basically what become. And now it's something that I say it's out of my control. It's basically, it grew so much that it's basically superated all of us. It's a thing on its own. It has grown so much more than we've ever imagined.
And it's delicious. I order the 4-pack all the time. My husband, he loves it, and so do I. But it's, so this is an example of, I just want everyone listening to this to kind of really think through this entire trajectory of, you had your story and your own path and your own journey that led you to this place. You happened to meet someone who had a lot of synergy with you, but because Tyler's got his own story. What did he lose? Like 300 pounds, something crazy.
Yeah.
on more of a ketogenic diet. So you have this, I need to come back from anorexia. He had this, I need to lose a crap ton of weight, but you had very similar approaches to this way of eating, a very similar methodology and point of view. So you found some synergy. You have this natural entrepreneurial point to you. So you're like, I have this thing, help me build it. And I really think the two of you too are a great example of people that have different strengths and different personalities that work beautifully together. You're in Mexico and he's in, where is he? Tennessee or something?
Tennessee.
Yeah. Like in totally different places. And then through your journey, there was a solution. There was a problem that you found a solution for. You had this recipe that was just kind of clunky. People had to make it themselves. They didn't measure properly, found a solution, not perfect because it's expensive. It needs to be shipped in from Mexico. So let's make it ourselves. You happen to meet Rob Wolf. What a phenomenal connection that is. And the next thing you know, you have this enormous product that's now got a mind of its own. It's literally become its own thing, Element. I love it. We order it all the time. So between Ketogains and Element, you've kind of quartered this, especially keto for weight loss, right? It might be different if you're trying to solve an epileptic problem, or some sort of neurological problem, then, it's different. But I've heard you say so many times, stop chasing ketones and start chasing results, right? Our starting place is this concept of what ketones do, what a ketogenic diet does, that's going to help people sort of release body fat, but it's not that simple. It's far more complicated. I think you guys have done just a phenomenal job at it. And you also, I thought I saw on your website, you're also starting to build a relationship with a doctor, right? Or what's going on with that?
I like you mentioned, like I'm someone that very, how do you say? I don't like to settle down. I'm always looking for new ideas and things to
that's
build.
The entrepreneur. Mm-hmm.
So I usually chew a little bit more than I can actually swallow. So apart from Ketogains and the one-on-one coaching, I also host, you're familiar probably with Menno Henselmans, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm his partner and I give the classes, especially on Spanish. And we do actually some published research on certain topics. I'm like a specialist in low carb training, etc. So I write and review the chapters that he gives for his courses on that. I translate everything to Spanish. So I host the Spanish version for people that want to have the certification in Spanish. For this, I also give lectures in Mexico to several universities on the topic. I own a small company here in Mexico that makes keto tortillas and keto pastries in a way, like very much a combination of paleo and keto, like whole food, no artificial ingredients. I'm currently helping my wife, to everybody that wants to have plastic surgery in Mexico. My wife is a plastic surgeon. She has her own clinic. And so right this year, my goal is to stop doing so many things and help her very much a little bit of order in her clinic, because she's grown so much, but she has a little bit of chaos in the administrative parts and process, like many doctors. And very much that's what I'm currently doing. Let me see if I missed something. I think that mostly that's what I do.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And we're over time, so I have to let you go. So if there's any last minute questions, folks, ask them now because we have to run. But thank you so much for everything. I've just gotten such joy out of watching Ketogains take off the way it does. Many of the people that have graduated from our course are either coaches of yours or have taken your boot camps and swear by it. I just think it's a phenomenal example of what can be, and just how many problems it solves. It provides education, it provides support, it provides accountability, it provides community, and we're getting people better results. We just are. I'm attending a fitness conference, and we're going to be promoting the Primal Fitness course. And I'm building out a presentation now that's just talking about all the things that are wrong right now with the conventional sort of fitness, nutrition, and wellness paradigm, and that we need to do better, that we need to build better businesses, because the model that we're in, this trading dollars for hours model, is not in line with what the client needs. It's just not. They need outcomes. They don't need, we need to engage with clients differently. and better. And that's what programs do instead of a diet, right? And we need to change the way people train.
That's
Get off the
exactly
stinking
why
treadmill.
we changed or we sort of coined the phrase chase results and not ketones, because, well, you can get high ketones by various methods, but you're not
Mhm.
really getting what you actually want, something measurable apart from ketones, right? Something that actually changes your life.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that one of the challenges for a lot of coaches is creating these either both objective but also subjective measurements.
Mhm.
So for example, with my personal clients, one thing that I do review, because I have much more time with them, is both how they feel, which is subjective, and then measurements and of course, weight and other metrics. But between both of them, even if they're getting perfect results, let's say in progress, if they feel horrible, there's something that needs to be adjusted. Or if they feel great, but they're not seeing progress, it's like, okay, we're seeing each week and just to chat, that's great. But I myself as a coach don't feel fulfilled if I'm not giving you results.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm probably robbing you of money, right? Like you can be
Oh my
here
gosh.
like 2 years with me, but if I don't see you progressing, what's happening here?
That's like a whole other episode because this comes up a lot with coaches. And we need to just have you and Tyler on the podcast to talk about some of these intricacies around keto, and the differences you're seeing and people's approaches, but also this too, because we will see coaches that bring on new clients, they're new coaches, and the client's not getting the results. And the coach is stumped because they're eating primal. Okay, but there's more to it. I mean, improving food quality for most people is the first step. Let's clear the decks and just make sure they're eating good food. And for some people, that's all they need, because it's kind of like everything falls into line. I'm eating better food, so I'm not hungry, so I eat less. And I have more energy, so I move more, right? All this stuff kind of falls in line. But other people just have a lot of either bad habits they need to unwind, a lot, to your points, a lot of like psychological tendencies towards certain behaviors that are getting in their way. Could be stress, could be sleep, all these other things, could be a lot of things. And that's probably a whole other episode. So we really do need to have you guys on the podcast to kind of pull some of this stuff out. The purpose for this webinar is really more business related. So, and Sharice is saying she joined your Facebook group. So impressed with your journey. Thank you for sharing. I'm still not sure what my niche is, but I feel like keto is an important component. And there's a lot of people that come to this school because of that. And so
I think that the most important thing, like you said, and this is something that you teach on the course, is finding your own voice and your own niche. And it doesn't have to be even keto. Like, as long as I think that currently, like you were saying, on the industry and the current thing that people eat, and this is something that likely be my last line of thought. Nobody right now in this day and age has solid nutrition training.
Yeah.
I think that maybe we were like, how old are you, Laura? Like over 40, let's say. Okay. I think that we were likely the last generation that we sort of had some grandmother and mother input on nutrition, because how I see now friends and their kids, etc., everything they learn from nutrition is what they see on TV. Yeah. Basically, it's an advert for processed foods, right? Basically, if we keep eating like that, this is the reason why we are getting into this obesity epidemic.
Oh yeah.
The secret is basically do the opposite and eat as much as unprocessed food as you can. Doesn't matter even if it's keto or not. Just eat vegetables, even some fruit and meats, and you are golden, basically.
100%. I was looking at some pictures from back when I was a kid. So this is the 70s. Okay. There was no one overweight in any of these pictures, not significantly overweight, like none. And then I looked at photos from the 80s, bigger difference of people that were overweight. And then you look at more and more. So it wasn't that long ago. It's not like it's, 100 years ago. Really, it was rare to be obese, right? I'm talking like 50 years ago. It's not that long ago. So we've got a long road to hoe, and to 100% your point, the difference is the exposure and the access to processed foods. Like my mom's first generation, and it was really when like TV dinners became vogue, right? And it was this liberate yourself from cooking message that's taken us downhill. So once again, whole other podcast, whole other interview. So I'm going to let these folks go. Thank you so much. This was so great. And tell people where they can find you and start following you and learn from you.
For sure. So basically everything that you see Ketogains is basically us. You want to also follow me personally, you can find probably Darth Luigi. That's another story for the name, but basically that's how I started on Reddit. And so became a brand name and I kind of changed it. Otherwise people won't know who I am. But you can find me like Luis Villaseñor or Darth Luigi on Reddit or Instagram or Twitter, and I'll be there. The great thing is that I try to answer all questions. That's part of my job, how I see it. So if you ask openly, I may just reply back with any nuanced answer depending.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you very much, Luis. It's been great. And I'll get with you guys to get you on the podcast.
Of course, Laura. Thank you.
Awesome. Bye, everybody.
Bye.